Good morning, everybody. Today we are going to do the second module of revision, transportation. So transportation means it is the transfer of or transport of food and nutrients and respiratory gases to different parts of the body. So in human beings, the transport of food is taking place with the help of blood vascular system. There are mainly three components in the blood vascular system. The presence of a pumping organ, that is four-chambered muscular heart, and then a sets of blood vessels to carry the blood from heart to different parts of the body. They are broadly classified into three categories: arteries, veins, and capillaries. Arteries will carry the blood from heart to different parts of the body, whereas veins carry the blood from different parts of the body back into the heart. And the connecting link between arteries and veins consists of a set of very minute thin-walled network of blood vessels that is called as capillaries, where through that only the filtration of blood takes place and the needed nutrients as well as the respiratory gases will be exchanged between the blood and the tissues. The third component is, of course, the medium, that is the blood as well as the lymph. So these three components together made up of or consists of blood vascular system. So here it is given: the heart, which is a special contractile blood pumping organ, then blood vessels, the tubes associated with heart into which the blood is pumped and circulated. Then the blood, which is a fluid connective tissue. So the meaning of fluid connective tissue means the main medium of the blood is fluid, onto which only the matrix of the tissue is fluid. In that, the solid components, that is the corpuscles, will be floating. Hence it is called as fluid connective tissue. Why it is called as connective tissue means the blood will connect different parts of the body. From the heart, the blood will be passing to different parts such as kidney, liver, intestine, etc. So it is connecting different parts of the body and coordinating it. Hence it is called as connective tissue. So it is fluid in nature and it helps to connect different parts of the tissues. And then that's why it is called as fluid connective tissue. Then we'll move on to the next components of the blood. So blood is a fluid connective tissue. A fluid part will be there. At the same time, solid components also will be there. So the fluid part of the blood is called as plasma. And approximately 55% of the fluid part of the blood consists of plasma. The remaining 45% consists of the blood corpuscles. Now we'll move into the plasma, the components of plasma. Plasma again consists of 90 to 95%, majority of the component is water. And in that water only the organic and inorganic components are present, dissolved. And the organic components again we can divide into proteins and minerals. So here the proteins are mainly broadly categorized into three types, that is collectively called as blood proteins or plasma proteins. And the plasma proteins are categorized into, you can see in the flow chart, that is fibrinogen, globulin, and albumin. As you all know, fibrinogen, it is an agent which helps in clotting of blood. It is found in inactive form and it is proteinaceous in nature and it is found in the blood. So hence it is called as clotting factor or clotting protein. And the next one, it is globulin. Why it is got the name globulin means it is globular in shape, round in shape, hence it is called as globulin. And mainly the globulin helps in immunity. That means the ability to fight against the invading germs. How it is helping means the majority of the globulin take part in the formation of antibody. The nature of antibody is immunoglobulin. So the antibody helps in fighting against the invading germs and protecting us from contracting the diseases. So it is helping in immunity. The third component of plasma protein is albumin. Albumin helps in regulating the osmotic balance. That means the ratio between the cation and anionic component in the blood. So it is a buffering agent, we can say. It is regulating the osmotic concentration of the blood. So these are the mainly the main functions of the plasma proteins. And apart from that, very less amount of that is 2 to 5% of minerals also will be there. So mainly the minerals as well as vitamins also can be carried by. So the main minerals which are present in the blood are sodium, potassium, calcium, and then bicarbonate ions, phosphate ions, etc. All those things together comprises the fluid part of the blood that is called as plasma. So it helps in carrying the nutrients, carrying the vitamins, carrying the antibodies from one place to another. Then we'll move on to the next part that is called as formed elements or corpuscles. And the corpuscles are classified into three categories: RBC, WBC and platelets. RBC, the name again it is called as erythrocyte. Erythro means red. Why they got red color means RBC carries a coloring pigment which is called as hemoglobin. The main component of hemoglobin, it is heme. Heme means it is an iron containing pigment, and it is red in color. And it helps in carrying respiratory gases. That means it will bind with oxygen as well as with carbon dioxide. So according to this, from the lungs, when the blood reaches the lungs, it will bind with oxygen, and then it will transport the oxyhemoglobin to different parts of the body. When it reaches the tissues, in the tissues carbon dioxide concentration is more, so in return the oxygen will be given to the tissue, and they will collect the carbon dioxide from the tissues and bring it back to the heart. So that is acting as the RBC, acting as the respiratory gas transporting cell because of the presence of HB, hemoglobin we can say. Then the second component is white blood cells. White blood cells, from the term itself, it is colorless. The name is leukocyte. Leuko means colorless. So RBC, if it is red, means WBC, it is colorless. And it is mainly help in fighting against the invading germs. Invading germs means whenever any pathogen is entering or any harmful substances entering, means different types of WBC cells are there. So here in the chart we have given based on in the cytoplasm. Each WBC cell, they have the cytoplasm. Within the cytoplasm, if granules are present, then it is called as granulocytes. If granules are present, then it is called as granulocytes. If granules are absent in the cytoplasm, then they are called as agranulocytes. So granules itself, granulocytes itself is divided into three main categories, that is basophil, eosinophil, neutrophil. The same way, granulocytes also are divided into two, that is lymphocytes and monocytes. In this, all these different types of WBC, either they will produce antibody, or they will produce toxin substances, or they will engulf and they will inactivate the pathogen, and always they will make sure that our body is protected from other germs. So whenever our immune system is weak, the cells cannot produce these immunogenic substances, and in that case only we are getting the diseases. So mainly our body is protected from other germs and pathogens and all with the help of WBC. So it is protective in function. Then the third component of corpuscles, that is platelets, or it also called as thrombocytes. So thrombus, the word meaning is clotting. So it helps in, thrombocytes means the cells which helps in blood clotting. How they are helping means the thrombocytes will release certain clotting factors whenever there is a cut or wound. Whenever the blood vessels are exposed, if there are any cut or wound, immediately through that the profuse bleeding will take place. So whenever the blood is exposed to the atmospheric air, immediately the thrombocytes or the platelets will release the clotting factors, and in the presence of plasma protein, that is fibrinogen, which is an inactive substance, that will get activated and they will produce thread-like structures, that is called as fibrin. And this fibrin will cover the wounded area, and they will form a network. and through that the the liquid part will ooze out, but the blood cells will be collected, and it will gradually transform into a plug-like structure which will cover the wounded area, and in that way the clotting will take place. So there will be a covering will be formed over the wounded area, and the further leakage of the blood can be prevented. So it is mainly initiated with the help of platelets. So platelets helps in blood clotting. Now we'll move on to the next slide, that is the pictorial demonstration of different types of blood cells. So you see here the first one itself is RBC. So here from the color itself we can make the difference, that is it is red in color, and one more special feature is there, RBC is devoid of nucleus. There is no nucleus inside the RBC. Why? The absence of nucleus means the function of RBC is to transport respiratory gases. So if nucleus is there, means that much space will be occupied by the nucleus. So very little space only will be there for the oxygen or carbon dioxide to be stored. So that is why by nature itself the RBC is devoid of nucleus, and it can carry maximum amount of respiratory gases. The second category, the second this one is white blood corpuscles. So you can see different types of WBCs. All they will fight against the germs. The third one, you can see the very minute cells. It is actually not the cell, it is a fragments of cells. One cell itself is fragmented into many pieces. So here it is fragments of cells. There it can help in transport of the clotting of blood. It is pigments, it is small bits of cell itself, that is by platelet. When we are dropping a plate, it will break up into many pieces. The same way only platelets also will appear. It was actually one big cell in the immature state. When it gets differentiated, it will fragment into many pieces, and each piece will produce the clotting factors, and it helps in clotting of blood. Now we can move on to the next component of the blood, equivalent component or equivalent medium, more or less similar to blood, the fluid part, that is called as the lymph. Lymph is it is formed from blood, and again after the circulation it will join into the blood itself. So it is actually the component, almost all the components of the blood will be present in the lymph. But except there is, because this lymph is formed when the blood is passing through the capillaries. When the blood is passing through the capillaries will have minute pores, and it is lined by only single cell membrane. Okay, single cell layer of cells only, and small minute pores also will be there. So artery will divide into minute capillaries, that is called as minute capillaries, which is having small pores. So when the blood passing through that with high pressure, the fluid part along with the certain components also, except the blood cells. Except the blood cells means RBC and majority of the WBC will be retained, but lymphocyte is a type of WBC. Lymphocyte and the fluid component, calcium, magnesium, iron, etc., oxygen, carbon dioxide, everything will be filtered out in the form of a liquid. So that liquid part is called as lymph. And this lymph will be circulating throughout the surface of the tissues and organs and organ system and all, and direct diffusion. The transport of substances is taking place through the direct diffusion. So the oxygen will be taken, instead of that from the tissue the carbon dioxide will be given out. In that way always there will be a diffusion. So it is acting as the medium between the blood and the tissue. So from the blood the liquid part will be oozing out along with the needed nutrients, and that from there that is called as intercellular space. They will be collected in the space between the tissues and the blood vessels, that is intercellular space. There it will be collected, and from there the needed nutrients, the tissues will be taken, and in return the unwanted substances will be given it back. Then the waste materials along with the toxic contents, or if any, or carbon dioxide, everything will be collected by from the capillaries into the veins. So it is actually the capillaries connecting the arteries and veins, and through that the filtration in the form of lymphatic secretion, and there the diffusion will be taking place. So when we are saying the composition of the appearance of the lymph, it is a clear yellow liquid. Okay, why it is yellow means because RBC and all will be in the blood itself. It will not be filtered. The size of the RBC is more, and it cannot more than the pore size of the capillary. So it will be retained in the blood vessel itself. Only the fluid part will be coming out. And the second point, when we are saying it is composed of a fluid matrix, even same like blood. Blood also is a fluid connective tissue. So the component is fluid itself, and along with that certain amount of lymphocytes also will be there. Very few proteins also will be there, and it also helps in carrying the digested fat. We have learned in digestive system that is villi contain the small lymphatic vessels. Through the digested fats will be directly absorbed into the lymph. So lymph helps in circulation of absorbed digested fats. So when we are discussing about the functions, you can see in the slide itself, it drains excess amount of tissue fluid from extracellular space back into the blood. Then it contains lymphocytes and antibodies, so it also helps in immunity. Then it transports digested fats to different parts of the body, and ultimately the blood, the lymphatic tissue, from the tissues it will be taken, the liquid will be taken and it will be collected by, there is no pumping organ for the lymph, but even then it will be collected into small fine capillaries, then from the capillaries into another duct that is called as lymphatic vessels, and many lymphatic vessels join into a very big duct that is called as lymphatic duct, and then they will be collected back into the vein. So it will join again into the vein. When it join into the vein, automatically the lymph will transform into blood itself. So there is no pumping organ. Then how the lymph is from our body, it is drained back into the heart or into the vein, means when we move our hands, legs, when we change our position in this way, in that movement, muscular movement itself will help in this fluid to be collected into the lymphatic capillaries, from there into the lymphatic vessels, then into the lymphatic duct, then it will join into the vein. So once it is joined into the vein, again it is transforming back into the blood. So it is a parallel kind of transporting system. Now the next topic we are moving into the discussion, that is, already we have said the blood and the lymphatic fluid and the components of the blood. Along with that, the second important part of this, blood vessels. So already I said two types of blood vessels broadly, that is arteries and veins. So the artery and the vein is interconnected by network of capillaries. So mainly the difference between arteries and veins. The arteries, we can say, it will collect the blood from heart to different parts of the body. Okay, so it is collecting, that is the collecting vessels, we can say. So here it is always, we can say, arteries will carry oxygenated blood from heart to different parts of the body. But there is an exception, that is pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery will carry deoxygenated blood to the lungs, okay, from heart to the lungs, that is from right side of the ventricle to the lungs for purification. That is only an exception. The rest all arteries always will start from heart and then supply the oxygenated blood to different parts of the body. So it has to reach till the legs. So it is heart will pump the blood with much force, and arteries also the blood passing through with much force. So the walls of the artery, okay, the walls of the artery are highly elastic, and at the same time it is highly thickened compared to the vein. So it is provided with very thick wall, and it is highly elastic because more pressure, with much pressure the blood is passing through, so they have to withstand that pressure, so they have thick wall. And it is elastic also, because whenever the force, they have to expand, and at the same time they have to contract. So they are highly elastic and very thick wall. Then the third point we have to say, they are the distributing vessel. They are distributing from heart to different parts of this. Then the position, when we are saying, it is deeply set in our body. So when we look into our hand and all, we can see the bluish coloration, bluish vessels passing through. That is actually veins. So even deeper into that only we can see. We cannot see the artery directly. Which one you are seeing with that green lines, it is vein only. So it is deeply set and superficially set as vein. Then veins, when we are saying veins carry deoxygenated blood from heart, from different parts of the body to the heart. So it is collecting vessels, we can say. It is collecting the blood from different parts of the body. Hence it is containing deoxygenated blood, impure blood. It collects impure blood and pour it into the heart. Then compared to the thickness of the valve, when we are saying it is thin. Compared to the artery, it is thin and it is less elastic. And always the veins consist of valves. What is importance of valves means, because it will ensure that it will prevent the backflow of impure blood, and it will prevent the mixing of impure blood with the blood. If it is, when the blood is passing through the veins, if there is no vein, means there will be a chance to reverse it back. So when it is reversing back, it will again reach into the heart. It will enter into the artery, and then the mixing of the pure blood and impure blood will take place. So always vein consists of, in here and there, anywhere at particular intervals, they will contain the valves. So the valves will prevent the backflow of blood into the arteries, because arteries and veins are interconnected by capillaries. So if vein, there is no, if any reverse back, means it will automatically reach into the artery. So artery always contain pure blood, veins always contain impure blood. So even though I say veins always contain impure blood, there is also an exception, that is pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein is the only vein which carry the oxygenated blood, that is from the lungs. After purification from the lungs, the blood will collect, the pure blood will be collected, and it will be poured on to the left atrium. Okay, it will pour on to the left atrium. So that is the only artery which carry this one. So all these 5 points are important. For the exam, if they ask, you have to say all that 5 points. Now we will move on to the structure, the pumping organ. So here we have explained the blood, we have explained the blood vessels. Now the third component and most important component, that is the pumping organ, because our body, throughout the body, the blood has to be supplied. So a pumping organ with much energy, the blood has to be forcefully, it should be pumped. So this main organ in that is heart. And when we are saying about the heart, the human heart is slightly located. It is located in the chest cavity, located towards slightly left, and it is well protected externally by rib cage, same like lungs. Then again there is one more protection. There is a double layered covering that is called as pericardium, and it is filled with a fluid that in between the membranes there is a fluid that is called as pericardial fluid. So it will act as a shock absorber. So pericardium along with the rib cage and pericardial fluid, that will protect the heart from outside. Then internally, when we are saying the heart itself, the functionally, when we are saying the nature of the heart, when we are saying it is muscular in nature. It is made up of cardiac muscles. Okay, it is rhythmic in action, and it is involuntary, and it is 4-chambered. Okay, 4-chambered. So it is, upper chambers are called as atrium, lower chambers are called as ventricle, and the atrial wall is thickened compared to the ventricular wall. Why it is so means, atrium is the collecting chamber. Atrium is the collecting chamber. You can see in the figure, atrium is the collecting upper chambers, and it is the collecting chamber, and ventricles are the distributing chamber. From the ventricle only the blood is pumped to different parts of the body, from the left side and from the right side to the lungs. So they have to reach up to that. That is why the walls of the ventricles are thickened compared to the atrium. And here one more specific feature you can see here. I said the heart is chambered, 2 upper chambers and 2 lower chambers. So the right and left side of the heart is separated by a muscular walls. Here you can see muscular wall, that is called as septum. So the right side will always carry impure blood, whereas the left side always will store the pure blood. So that is divided by a muscular septum. And same way the upper chambers and the lower chambers, or we can say atrium and the ventricle, are separated by a muscular wall. That muscular wall we will call it as atrioventricular septum. Atrioventricular septum. That is why it is called as four-chambered heart. So septums are there, septum right side and left side with septum, and upper and lower with the help of atrioventricular septum. And here you can see the left ventricular wall is much thickened than the right ventricular wall. Always they'll ask why it is so. Because here the left ventricular wall is ventricle collect the pure blood, and this pure blood, from this it has to be passed on to the pump to the blood vessel that is called as aorta, and aorta distributes the blood to different parts of the body. Okay, so it is distributing the blood from heart to the even to the tip of the toe, we can say. So the distance carried by which has to be traveled by the blood is far compared to the other side, because right side it is the blood vessel, that is pulmonary artery only. It has to carry the blood only to the lungs, which is near to the heart. Okay, the position of the lung is very near, so the distance they have to travel only very less compared to the supply of pure blood. So here the impure blood from the right side of the ventricle, it has to reach only up to lungs. So here the force is less, force only needed compared to the left side. So left side it has to pump with very high pressure, and then only it will reach even to the tip of the toe. So that is why the left ventricular wall compared to the right ventricular wall, it is more thickened. So whenever you are drawing the diagram, you have to make sure that atrial walls are very thin, then the ventricular walls compared to the atrium it is thick, and left ventricular wall is more thicker than the right ventricular wall. And don't forget to draw the septum also. Okay, then one more thing we have to say, I said atrium and ventricles are separated by septa, AV septa we can say, but they are perforated. Perforated means there also there is an opening, and that opening is guarded by, so right side also as well as the left side also, it is guarded by the valves. So the valves will ensure that the blood is flowing. When the valves are open from the atrium, it will fall on to the it will flow into the atrium. Okay, it will automatically it will go into this, and once it is filled, then automatically the valves will be closed. So the function of valves on the AV septum is to ensure that the flow of blood from atrium to the ventricle. Okay, atrium to the ventricle, never reverse. Okay, always it is unidirectional flow of blood from atria to the ventricle will be ensured by AV valves. AV valves itself, again it is called by different names. On the right side we will call it as tricuspid valve, and on the left side we will call it as bicuspid valve or mitral valve. Or so tricuspid, three cusp or three flaps are there, hence it is called as tricuspid, and bicuspid means two flaps, hence it is called as bicuspid, or generally we will call it as atrioventricular valves. So atrioventricular valves will ensure the blood flow from atrium to the ventricle, never from ventricle to this one, unidirectional flow. And the same way, that is from the right ventricle as well as from the left ventricle, there arises the blood vessel. So from the right ventricle, the blood vessel, that is it is contain impure blood, so it has to reach up to the legs, up to the lungs. So hence that branch, that blood vessel is called as pulmonary vein. Okay, pulmonary arch we can say. Pulmonary arch, it will divide into two branches, one branch to the right lung and then another branch to the left lung. So from the right side, the blood from the ventricle, right ventricle will pass through the pulmonary arch, and it will divide into, and then it will send into the lungs. The same way from the left ventricle also there is a major blood vessel that is called as aorta. and aorta will carry the pure blood from left ventricle through the aorta, and it will supply the blood to different parts of the body. Okay, so these two are again guarded by valves, and that valves are called as semilunar valves. Why it is called as semilunar valves means it is having that valve, the shape is having the semilunar shape. That means half moon shape, hence it is called as semilunar valves. What is the function of semilunar valves? It always ensures, that is, when the ventricle contracts, the blood from the ventricle will be pumped into the blood vessels. So it should not return back. So the backflow of blood from the blood vessels back into the ventricle is prevented by. So always in the upward direction only it will go, never in the reverse direction. So there also it is ensured that the valves will ensure that the backflow of blood will not take place. So always from the ventricles to the respective blood vessels. And the functioning of heart, when we are saying, the atrial wall, when the blood vessels from different regions, that is the superior vena cava, the vein, as well as the inferior vena cava. So superior vena cava from the head region, as well as inferior vena cava from the lower region of the body. They will collect the impure blood from different parts, head as well as lower region of the body. Then they will pour into the right atrium. Then from the right atrium, the blood through the AV valves, it will pass on to the right ventricle. And from the right ventricle, it will pass, because it is containing impure blood. So this will pass on through the pulmonary vein. Then it will, pulmonary aorta also we can say, then it will divide, and then pulmonary artery, not pulmonary vein, pulmonary artery. This will divide into two, and then it will supply the blood to the lungs for purification. After the purification, the pure blood will be carried by pulmonary vein. So that is a vein, only vein which carry pure blood. So pure blood from the lungs will be carried by the pulmonary vein. Then it will pour into the left atrium. So the from the left atrium, the blood again flow into the left ventricle. And when the ventricle contracts, the blood from the ventricle will pass through the aorta. So the aorta will supply the pure blood to different parts of the body. So this is the functioning of heart. So first the atrium will contract. So before the atrium contracting, the blood vessels, that is vena cava, superior vena cava as well as inferior vena cava from the different parts of the body. The same way the pulmonary vein will carry the blood, pure blood from the lungs. So both sides of the chambers, right side chamber impure blood, left side chamber atria the pure blood, they will be filled. So when the pressure increases, the atria will contract. The contraction of atria is called as systole. Okay, systole. And then that immediately after that, with much pressure, the blood is present in the atrium, that will force the AV valves to open. So when the valves are open, the blood from the atria will fall into the ventricles. So when the ventricles also filled with blood, the pressure will increase. So by the time the atrium will relax. But here it will be more contraction. This will be closed. The atrial valves, AV valves will be closed. So here the pressure will generate. With much pressure, when it is forcing up, the semilunar valves will open. So when the semilunar valves are open, right side into pulmonary artery and left side into aorta, the blood will rush in. When the blood from the atria, from the ventricle, when it passes into the blood vessels, the valves will close. The semilunar valves will close. So the blood then supplied to different, aorta will supply to different parts, then pulmonary artery will supply to the lungs. So this, by the time this ventricle will be relaxed. So contraction of the heart is called as systole, relaxation of the heart is called as diastole. This closing and opening of the valve, closing of these valves can be, nowadays we can hear with the help of a stethoscope. So the AV valves are when it is closing, when the heart is functioning, when we keep the stethoscope on the chest region, when the AV valves are closed, we can hear the first sound, that is lump. Then after some time we can hear the second sound. That second sound represents the closure of the semilunar valves. The semilunar valves, the closure can be heard in the form of dup. So this two sounds together we can call it as heart sounds. So when the doctors are keeping the stethoscope, they can hear lup, dup, lup, dup, lup, dup. So that represents the beating of the heart. So if the heart valves are not functioning, means sometimes that lup sound won't be heard properly. It's the same way dup sound also won't be heard. So if lup sound is heard in the form of lush, or if the dup sound is heard in the form of dush, in that way, that case we will call it as murmuring of the heart. So if the doctor is hearing in that form, that is instead of lup, dup, if they are hearing it dash, lush, dash, lush, dash in slow wave pattern, means that indicates the valves are not functioning. So if lup is not hearing properly, which valve will be? AV valve will not be functioning. If dup is not hearing properly, means that semilunar valve is not functioning. So some people, they will be there due to aging or sometimes due to other childhood diseases, congenital heart diseases and all, we can say valve may not be functioning properly. So that valvular function can be detected by stethoscope. And if any damage is there, means nowadays valvular replacement treatments are available. Okay, now so with that I hope the functioning of heart is clear. Now we'll move on to the next slide, that is the circulation. So here in lower organism, when we are saying, when we compare the evolution of heart in different organism from simple to complex organism, always we can see the fishes, there is only two chambers, that is one upper chamber and one lower chamber. Upper chamber is called as atrium, lower chamber is called as ventricle. And the heart as such, when we are saying, there is no differentiation between right side or left side. There is only two chambers. And always the heart contain impure blood. Then you may ask, then what happens to the pure blood? So here in fishes, the heart is acting as only the collecting chamber, blood collecting chamber. From the heart, the blood will pass on to the respiratory organ, that is gills. In fishes, gills, because they are living in water. And when the blood rushes into the gills, there the respiratory exchange will take place. Then directly from the gills, the blood will pass on to different parts of the body. And when it reaches the different parts of the body, the exchange will take place, and the impure blood, again it will be collected back into the heart. And that is, and why there is no separation and all, means fishes are simple organisms and they are poikilotherms, or we can say cold-blooded animals. They need not maintain their constant body temperature and all. So they will change their body temperature according to the surroundings. So they need not. So that is why their heart is, compared to the higher organisms, the heart is very simple and it is only acting as the collecting chamber, and that type of circulation we can call it as single circulation. So the direction of single circulation means from heart to the gills, and from the gills to the body parts, and then back into the heart itself. So it is single circulation. When from fishes to the amphibians, when you are moving, it is almost three chambers. Two upper chambers, that is atrium, and only single lower chamber, that is ventricle. So there is a kind of mixing will take place, but even then also there the circulation is single itself, because there they have different patterns of respiration. It can respire through gills, it can respire through skin, and it can respire through the body buccal cavity also. So the heart there also, it is acting as the collecting chamber alone, and amphibians also cold-blooded animals. And from amphibians, when we move on to the reptiles, it is 3.5 chambered one, we can say. And reptiles also cold-blooded only. And 3.5 means two upper chambers and partially divided lower chamber. So two atria and partially chambered, divided ventricle. There also it can manage because they are also cold-blooded. So they need not regulate their body temperature. Whenever the surrounding, the temperature is increasing, their body temperature also will increase. But when we go to the next two groups, that is birds and mammals, there they are always maintaining their constant body temperature. And since they have to maintain the constant body temperature, energy requirement is very high. So to meet that energy requirement, the blood has to pass to different parts of the body always, then and there. Hence, the 4-chambered heart, completely divided into 4 chamber. And there we can say the flow of circulation, we can say double circulation. So what do you mean by double circulation? Means the heart, the blood is pumping, or blood is passing through the heart twice in order to complete one full circulation. So here the figure it is given. The first half, it will call it as first part of the circulation, we'll call it as pulmonary circulation. Here you see the heart is 4-chambered, right side and left side. So from the heart, from the left side of the heart, the blood which is from the right side of the heart, which is impure, that is carried by the blood vessel, that is pulmonary artery. Then this will supply to the lungs, and the lungs, the purification is taking place. And from the lungs, the pulmonary vein will carry the pure blood, and it will pour onto the left upper chamber, that is atria. Left side always contain the pure blood. Then from there, the pure blood will pass on to the left ventricle. There, so one full circulation you see. From this, again it is going back into the left atrium. So once it entered into the heart. But it is not completed because it is impure blood only circulated, and they made purified, and they gone back to the heart. Then from the left ventricle, the pure blood has to be supplied to the different parts of the body. So here the body organs, there the exchange of gases takes place. And from there the blood will carry more amount of carbon dioxide and waste materials, and then it will pass on to the right atrium. So here you can see 2 steps. The first step is called as where the lungs are involved, that is called as pulmonary circulation. Lung, the pulmonary, the term is pulmonary. And here in the second step, that is applying the blood and then reversing it or returning it back to the heart, that system, body systems are taking part. Circulatory system, respiratory system, liver, kidney, etc. So here the body systems are involved, hence that circulation is called as systemic circulation. So here the blood is pumping through or passing through the heart in order to complete one full circulation. That type of circulation is called as double circulation. So this topic is very, very important. This diagram also is very important. So you have to explain it very neatly. So in order to complete one full circulation, the blood passes through the heart twice, and that is called as double circulation. The first circulation is where the lung is involved, that circulation is called as pulmonary circulation. The second one is where the body organs are involved, hence it is called as systemic circulation. Now when we'll move on to the next term, that is pulse. So when the heart pumps the blood, it will pass on to the artery with very high force. So when the blood passes through the artery, the arterial wall will contract and relax accordingly. So that wave of contraction of the heart can be felt in the walls of the artery, and mainly we can feel that contraction and that pulsation of the heart in the artery in the left wrist region. When the artery is passing through this bones in the wrist, not only in the wrist we can see, wrist also, when you press your finger on the wrist, you can feel the pulsation of the heart. And the same way temporal region, neck region, and all you can see. But doctors mostly they will see the left region, because the blood from the heart directly it will pass on through this arm region. So left arm, then only to the right arm. So that is why the doctors are checking the pulse always in the left wrist. So when you press it on this, you can feel the pulsations. You can count the wave of contractions. So that counting is called as pulse. So normally healthy person, normal healthy person in normal activities, the pulse rate will be 72 per minute. So if the number increases, there can be, it is an indication of there is some abnormality. If it is less also, there can be. So that is why the pulse rate is very important for detecting the health of a person. The second one we said the blood pressure. The next term, blood pressure means the pressure exerted on the arterial walls can be detected when the blood passing through the artery can be detected with the help of a machine. That machine is called as sphygmomanometer. You might have noticed when you visit the doctor, they will keep a band on the upper arm, and then they, with the help of a balloon, they will inflate the mercury, the tube in the mercury, and then they will press it on that one, and it can be measured, the pressure, with how much pressure the blood is passing through the arteries. So normal healthy person, the pressure can be detected, and that will be read in the form of 120 bar 80 millimeters of mercury. Okay, 120 bar 80 millimeters of mercury. And the upper reading denotes the systole. When the heart is contracting, the pressure will be more, because no space, the space will be less, so the pressure of the blood in the heart will be more. So that pressure, with the same pressure only, it will passing through the artery. So that pressure will be called as systolic pressure, upper region. So 120. And the lower reading represents the diastolic pressure. That means after contraction, the heart will relax. So when they are relaxing, the chest, the heart, the space within the heart will increase. So the pressure will decrease. That is why the lower reading is 80. So 180 bar 80 is the normal blood pressure. But there are, due to many reasons, sometimes maybe diseases, stress, strain, etc., the blood pressure may vary. And if the blood pressure is more, means that disease condition is called as hypertension. And if it is less, means that condition is called as hypotension. So normally it is 120 bar 80. And if it is more than 140 bar 100 and all, means then they have to go for medications. The same way, hypotension also equally important. If the pressure is less, means the supply of blood to the head, to the important body organs such as kidney, liver and all will be less. So less blood supply also will affect the functioning of the body. So hyperpressure, hypertension as well as hypotension also have to be dealt seriously. Now we will move on to this next slide, that is the clotting of blood. So clotting of blood is not detailed. In detail it is not given in your textbook, only 1 or 2 sentences only. So whenever there is any cut or wound, in order to prevent the excess amount of leakage of blood through the damaged blood vessels, our own body system is having a protective mechanism. How it happens means that platelets, whenever the cut or wound, the platelets also will get damaged. So this platelets will release a protein. That protein is called as prothrombin. Prothrombin will be converted into thrombin in the presence of thromboplastin, we can say. Prothrombokinase or thrombokinase. The cells injured tissues will release an enzyme, thrombokinase. So thrombokinase will act on a clotting factor, that is called as prothrombin. And in the presence of calcium, vitamin K, etc., prothrombin will be converted into an active substance that is called as thrombin. Then this thrombin will act on the plasma protein. We have learned already plasma protein. In the blood plasma, there is a plasma protein called as fibrinogen, which is an inactive substance that will be converted into very fine thread-like active substance that is called as fibrin. So this fibrin will interconnect together. They will form a network of threads. Through that, when the blood is passing through, all the RBCs and all the cells, the solid component of the blood will be sedimented there. So gradually the gaps will be closed. So when the gaps are closed, that is with the help of fibrin and the blood cells. Fibrin threads and the blood cells. Then finally, after 2 or 3 minutes, or maybe 4 or 5, minimum 5 minutes only, we'll say, within 5 minutes, the whole wound will be covered by a hard plugged solid matter. That solid matter covering is called as clot. And even after that also sometimes liquid, one yellowish liquid will come out, that the fluid which is oozing out from a fresh clotted area, that is called as serum. So the entire process is collectively we'll call it as clotting, blood clotting. So it will prevent the unwanted leakage of blood from the cut or wounded area. Now we'll move on to the plants, the transportation in plants. The plants as such, there is the requirement of transportation, because there also they are doing the photosynthesis, the food and nutrients from the leaves to different parts of the body. It has to be transported. The same way their source, because they are sedentary, they cannot move from one place to another. So they have to get the water and minerals from the soil. So these are the two important components that has to be transported from the water and minerals from the soil to the leaf, because leaf is the kitchen of the plant. So within the leaf only the carbohydrate will be synthesized by the process of photosynthesis and the presence of sunlight. So the water and minerals from the soil, it will be transported with the help of a tissue. That tissue is called as xylem. And from the leaf after the photosynthesis, the starch will be synthesized. That will be transported from leaf to different parts of the body, because all the parts of the plants are growing. So all the growing region, the food should reach. So it is bidirectional, we can say. That means it is from leaf to the stem, to the root, to the bud, to the flower, to the branches, etc. So it is multi-directional, many direction. From the leaf to different parts of the body, the food is conducted, transported. So that is done with the help of a tissue that is called as phloem. So xylem helps in transport of water and minerals from roots to leaves. It is unidirectional with the help of xylem. And the food from the leaf after the photosynthesis is transported from leaf to different parts. So let us see what is the difference between xylem and phloem. So here in the table it is given, the xylem carries water and minerals from roots to other parts of the plant. The phloem carries water and after photosynthesis, the products of photosynthesis from leaves to different parts of the body. Then xylem consists of, main component is xylem vessels. Whereas in phloem, it is sieve tubes, sieve tubes and companion cells. And the transport of water and minerals without, it is by diffusion. There is no requirement of energy. Whereas in phloem, the much energy is required, because the glucose, the carbohydrate or starch has to be converted into sugar, and sugar is transported to different parts of the body. So to transport the sugar, it needs an energy, ATP. So ATP, it is an active process. Then mainly the water is absorbed by main two, how the transport of water and minerals takes place. So as I said, the transport of water and minerals from roots to the leaves is by xylem vessels, xylem tracheids or xylem vessels. It is a tubular structure. So from root till the leaves, there is a continuous tubular cells will be there, and it is always unidirectional from root to the leaf. And there are how the water is rising up till the root, till the leaf. Mango tree or jackfruit tree and all means height is very much. Grass and all means it is only very small height only. But there are many plants which are very tall. So how this from the soil? There is no pumping, isn't it? No motor, no other accessory machines. So how this water from the soil, it is rising till the tip of the leaves are everywhere. All the branches ends in leaves. So till that it has to reach. So how it is done means it is by two major forces. Major process we can say. The first process is called as root pressure, and the second force we can call it as transpiration pull. So what do you mean by root pressure? Means the soil will contain more amount of water, whereas in the root the water content will be less. So where there is more to less automatically by diffusion. The water which is in and around the soil particles will diffuse into the root. And when the water is entering into, along with that soil also contain many minerals. So automatically the minerals also will be diffused into the, they will dissolve, they will, from the soil, it will be absorbed into the root. So within the root, more amount of water and more amount of minerals. So there automatically there will be a pressure generated immediately at the tip of the root tip. Then from there, just above the region, the pressure will be less. So this water and minerals with more pressure to the less pressure, it will be going up. So in that way, slowly the water and along with the minerals, it from the root to the higher regions, it will flow. But that is not enough, because if the tree is very big, means that ordinary lifting or root pressure will not be enough for driving the water from lower region to the tip of the leaves. Simultaneously, there is one more process that takes place, that is called as transpiration. So as you all know, transpiration means it is the escape or the release of water vapor from leaves through the stomata. So when the water from the stomata through the mesophyll cells of the leaf through the stomata, when it is escaping out in the leaves near surface of near region or in the vicinity of the stomata, there will be a deficiency of water. So when there is deficiency of water, from where they will take from the next layer. So from there the water along with the minerals, it will move up. And then again that region there will be deficiency. So then again it will be driven. So there will be a suction force will take place. So more and more water will be eliminated through the stomata. So that region water will be less. So from the lower region it will be absorbed. Then again it will be here, it is more pressure will be there, but here no, less pressure. So less amount of water. So again from the lower region it will be driven. So automatically there will be a transpirational pull. More and more transpiration, more and more pulling force, suction force will be there. So in that suction force, at the same time from the root, there is a root pressure also will be there. Automatically the water and minerals will transfer from lower region to the higher region as a continuous column. And that is, in that way the water and minerals will be transported. And it is always unidirectional, always from root to the leaves. Leaves, the transpiration, the suction force. From the soil to the root, there is a root pressure. So in that way, both will be acting together. They help in the transport of water and minerals by diffusion. And this is automatically by diffusion, hence no energy is required. The more transpiration, the more absorption from the soil. Now we'll move on to how the transport of food is taking place. It is taking place through the phloem. And the phloem, the main components are seed tube and companion cells. And it is bidirectional. That is, sometimes it is from leaf to root, or sometimes leaf to shoot, sometimes leaf to flowers, buds, etc. Wherever the growth is taking place, to that region the sugar or the carbohydrate has to be transported. And especially it is the photosynthetic product is starch, but starch is size wise it is very big and it is slow in, it cannot be transported very fast. So as soon as after the photosynthesis, the carbohydrate will be converted into sucrose, that means sugar, which is compared to the starch, it is small in size, very easily it can be transported, and it is less reactive also. So it will be converted into sucrose, and it will be transported through the seed tubes from leaves to different parts of the body. That process is called as translocation. So transpiration helps in absorption of water and minerals, means translocation helps in transport of food from leaves to different parts of the body. So translocation means it is the transfer of food from leaf to different parts of the body with the help of phloem, that too seed tubes and companion cells. So that is the definition of translation. And here the food will be stored if whenever as a result of photosynthesis excess amount of food is produced, means that excess amount will be stored in storage organs. So it will vary according to the type of plant. If it is tapioca, that is kulli or marchini, we'll say it will be stored in the roots. If it is ginger, means it is in the stem, potato stem. Then sometimes it can be stored in the fruits, apple, tomato. Sometimes it can be stored in the leaf, spinach. Sometimes it can be stored in the flower, cauliflower. So in different parts, the excess amount of food will be stored, and it can keep it whenever adverse condition arises. That time they will reutilize it back. They'll convert it back and they can utilize that one. Now we'll move on to the next topic, that is the translocation is an active process. That means the food can be carried through the phloem, through the seed tube with the help of energy. It cannot be driven automatically, so it is energy requiring process. It is an active process. So with this we come to an conclusion. So wishing you all the best and study well, and if any doubt you can clarify later.